and it's their intrinsic
nature. Now, this food basically robs.
Sound feasible, sound like.
Everybody, thanks for watching. Now, I want to do this video real quick to get into the whole Hebrew Israelite doctrine. Now, what's going on is, of course, you get Hebrews who come to this channel and probably to many other channels, and they don't watch the video. They don't watch it. They leave comments. You know, Hebrew Israelites are really stubborn. They believe that they are completely right. It's nothing nobody can say to convince them, no matter what facts you put out. You know, they believe that, you know, they're right. You know, everything they're saying is true. So they don't look at the videos. You know, the problem with that is a lot of the questions that I get, you know, are answered in the videos. And because, you know, they don't watch the videos, you know, we have this dialogue or debate, you know, between us. And I'm pretty sure it happens with other videos as well. Now, this is the thing. And as I mentioned before, you know, with religion, people get emotional, you know, especially these Hebrews. They get emotional because whenever they see something that is going against what they believe, you know, they immediately attack it without giving it a chance. It's because, as I said, you know, religion is tied to people's hope. Now, when they see something that's attacking their hope and what they feel like is going to, you know, fulfill their dream or fulfill their, you know, life in a better way, they attack that. And I get that, I understand that, but, you know, just because a person is emotionally attached to a religion doesn't make the religion true. So what I want to do here, I want to get straight into facts. I'm not even going to beat around the bush. I did a video already on the whole Hebrew Israelite doctrine, basically crushing it. And since they won't watch it, they're not getting the facts. So I'm going to go straight into it. But now understand, we can only go from facts, what we can prove and what seems logical to us as human beings. And this is another issue. You get people who want to debate on unproven facts, on fairy tales. There's no reason to debate on something that can't be proven or something you have no proof of. That's the whole purpose of faith, which is why religion requires faith, because there is no history, no proven history to back up the Hebrew Israelite doctrine, to back up Christianity, to back up Islam. This is a fact. There is no proven history. So no matter how much you scream and yell and believe that something is real, something is true, you need to understand that your religion is not based on proven history. So you cannot dialogue with a person who has proven facts and proven history to support, you know, what they're speaking on. And this is another issue that I get. I get people who want to argue about the Torah. They want to argue about the Old Testament and its validity. And you need to understand something. As far as the facts, the history shows us, your Torah comes from the Greeks. Now, when I talk about this, Hebrews, you know, they just get super upset. Oh my God, what are you talking about? That's stupid. Understand, you do not have a Hebrew Torah. You do not have a Hebrew manuscript that predates the Septuagint Greek. Find me one. You can go look in any book or talk about any myths or anything that so-called predated the Septuagint Greek, but you cannot prove it. You can't find me any pieces of it. You can't find me anything that says definitively there is a real manuscript that predates the Septuagint Greek, and we have it, and we have proof that it existed. It don't exist. So by that fact, your Torah comes from the Greeks. White Greeks, whether you want to accept it or not. You don't have nothing that predates the Septuagint. Now, I got into this whole thing and I talked about, you know, where this stuff comes from. So, you know, take a look. We're talking about the Greeks conquering Egypt. They have control over Egypt. understand, they actually conquered Israel before they came into Egypt. So Alexander the Great died 323 BCE. Then we get the rule of the Ptolemy. The whole Ptolemaic era begins here. Now understand, in history, as far as history is concerned, this is where the Old Testament comes from. We don't get no Old Testament without the Ptolemies, without the Greeks, period. So when you try to trace it back to the origin, we're talking about the beginning of the Old Testament. Officially, when you go back and look at the story, it goes back to the Septuagint. And according to history, how did we get the Septuagint? How did the Septuagint come about? It all goes back to the letters of Orestes and LXX. This is how this whole thing's supposed to have begun. Now understand, we don't have the original Hebrew version of the Old Testament. We don't have it. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we get the Septuagint. So we got to see, where did the Septuagint come from and how did the whole thing come about? And for that, we point to the letters of Orestes. So now understand, the letters of Orestes is just as suspect as the Tanakh. It's just as suspect as the Old Testament. The only difference is we can actually look at the letters of Orestes and trace it back to a people that have a proven history that we can see. We can actually trace it back to a people who is, proven, it has a history. We know about the Ptolemies. We know they existed. We can prove it. As with the Tanakh, we can't prove the existence of Moses. We can't prove the existence of these people. We can't prove what the Old Testament is saying. So as far as the Old Testament, the history of it lies within the book itself. We can't go outside of it and validate it, period. But with this letters of Orestes, we can do this. Now, I'm not saying that it's correct, because it's obviously not. And a lot of scholars, every serious scholar, agrees that the letters of Orestes is bogus. And I'm going to get into that later. But the whole thing about the letters of Orestes is talking about how the Septuagint came into place. So basically it's saying that, the librarian of Ptolemy, the first Philadelphia, it's basically said, we need a Greek version of the Hebrew law. So he tells Ptolemy, and Ptolemy basically spends all this money and frees a whole bunch of slaves to get the Jews to make this copy for him, to go ahead and do this translation. So he gets 6 elders from each of the 12 tribes of Israel to come to Alexandria, Egypt, to do the whole translation. So, Septuagint means 70, but it's really 72 people who basically translated the whole thing, in 72 days, according to the letters of Orestes. Now, when you start reading the letters of Orestes, the librarian is trying to convince Ptolemy that he should release some of the Jews in order for them to get the Jews in Israel to actually do this whole translation. Now, he goes on to say that, you release some of them, it'll be like in good favor, it'll be a good thing for them, it'll be basically a good look. And that he basically goes on to say that we all have the same God, except that we call our God Zeus. So when you start reading it, he's trying to convince Ptolemy, and Ptolemy eventually agrees. That's the beginning of the letters of Orestes. He's explaining what's going on and what happened and what led up to the whole thing. It's in very, very good detail, which is why it's suspect and why a lot of people don't believe it. There's too many details in it for somebody to write it out like that. So when you go on to read it, it's basically, the whole thing is suspect and it goes against the history that's proven. So the whole thing is, if the letters of Orestes is correct, then that means the rest of history as we know is wrong. Because when you look at the whole war between the Persians and the Egyptians and the Greeks, the letter basically goes against everything we know and prove about that war. It goes against it. So if the letters is correct, then it goes against history, and history is wrong, so that can't be. But if it's false, then it basically proves that the Greeks went on ahead and created the Old Testament. It gives a lot of validity to that story. Okay, so letters of Orestes. In this part, I want to read real quick because I believe it's an important part. It's a very long letter. There's a lot to it. So if you get a chance someday, go online and find it and read it and study it. Because when you start to compare it with actual history, when we start to compare it with the Bible too, and we start to compare it with what we know, then stuff doesn't fit. It don't work out when you start to compare it to what we know. So it says here. Go down to letters of Orestes, start at 35. It says, King Ptolemy sends greetings and salutations to High Priest Eleazar, since there are many Jews settled in our realm who were carried off from Jerusalem by the Persians at the time of their power, and many more who came with my father unto Egypt as captives.
Large numbers of these he placed in the army and paid them higher wages than usual. Now understand what he's saying here. He's saying that he took Jews. Now let's go to the Hebrew Israelite, definitions of Jews. According to them, they were black. They were black people. Like I said, I'm not disputing that. But according to this letter, we're talking about the white Greeks took black Jews and put them into his army to fight against black Egyptians. This is what this letter is saying. So it goes on to say, and when he had proved the loyalty of their leaders, he built fortresses and placed them in their charge, that the native Egyptians might be intimidated by them. And when I ascended the throne, adopted a kindly attitude towards all of my subjects, and more particularly to those who were citizens of yours. He's basically kissing the high priest's ass here, and it doesn't sound like something a Ptolemy would do. He's basically saying, hey, I liked your people. This is what happened, and I gave them jobs, and I did this, and he's kissing his ass trying to get this thing done. But we got to realize that they had already conquered Israel. They under the rule of the Greeks. So why all this ass kissing? So let's keep going. I have set at liberty more than 100,000 captives, paying their owners the appropriate market price for them. And if ever evil has been done to your people through the passion of the mob, I have made them reparations. The motive which prompted my action has been the desire to act piously and render unto the supreme God a thank offering for maintaining my kingdom in peace and great glory in all the world. Moreover, those of your people who were in the prime of life, I have drafted into my army, and those who were fit to be attached to my person and worthy of the confidence of the court, I have established an official position. Now, since I am anxious to show my gratitude to these men and to the Jews throughout the world and to the generations yet to come, I have determined that your law shall be translated from Hebrew tongue, which is in use amongst you, into Greek language, that these books may be added to the other royal books in my library. So he's saying basically what I said, that we want this whole thing translated. But understand, for this translation, he's given up a lot. Now, if you get a chance to read the letter, I'm not going to go through the detail, but it goes in details of the wealth, all the gold and everything that he gives them for doing this. That's one thing. And 100,000 slaves he released. And he pays all the people who own slaves. Now, understand, Ptolemy II Philadelphus. Now, I may have said Ptolemy I before. I just thought about that. If I said that, understand there's a lot of information going on in my head. I'm trying to get it out fast. And let me say this also. I know I give you guys a lot of sources and I read from a lot of things, but I try to find sources online so I can show you where my information is coming from instead of giving you a lot of book references. I understand a lot of people can't afford to buy some of these expensive books. So I try to find sources, as many sources as I can, to show you guys so you can understand that I'm not just saying this. I'm not just making this stuff up, and it's not just, coming from Merkabah. It's not just coming from me. It's coming from sources and books that I've read. Now, I'm going to give you a lot of references and show you a lot of books, but I want you to be able to, hop on your phone and go online and find these references and find these sources so you can get this information as well. And I have to order a book and wait for it to come. And, by then you probably done forgot all about the whole situation. So I try to give you as many references as well. Now, that being said, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, he actually made a law basically saying that if you don't turn in your slaves, like if you don't turn in your slaves and get this money, that if somebody snitches on you, and there'll be a trial, they'll basically put you on trial. And if you are found guilty, you will become the slave of the person who snitched on you. So that's kind of crazy. So, there's a whole big debate about, what if the slaves have kids? Are you going to give us the same amount for each kid? So Ptolemy II ended up saying, yeah, we'll give you the same amount for each kid. So a lot of people was getting rich off of, these slaves, according to the letters of Orestes. It's another thing that makes it suspect, because it's like, why give up so much money? Why free 100,000 slaves, all this to get a translation when you could have just forced a translation? And, you could have just made them do a real translation and then got, a Jew snitch or got somebody who actually spoke Hebrew to validate it. But he gives up so much. And then later on, the whole letter is contradicted by the actions of the next Ptolemy. The whole Greek Hellenistic age is all contradicted by that. So It doesn't support what this letters of Orestes is saying. But it's also suspect that you would free some slaves that go on ahead and make a law that's going to make your own citizen slaves if they don't agree with it. It's all suspect, and a lot of scholars disagree with it. So now at some point, these letters of Orestes ends up in Jewish hands. We know Josephus talks about the letters of Orestes. But now a lot of scholars didn't agree with the whole thing and thought it was bogus. Now it says here, Demetrios of Phileron, a client of Ptolemy I Soter, is not a good candidate as a collaborator with Ptolemy II Philadelphus. Now, this Demetrios is basically the librarian who I told you about, who went to Ptolemy II and said, hey, we need to get this whole thing in the library. We need to get this translation done. So listen to what he's saying. He's saying Roger S. Bagnell notes that he made a strategic mistake at the beginning of the reign of supporting Ptolemy's older half-brother and was punished with internal exile, dying soon after. So he's saying that, this dude is not even a good candidate to put into this whole story because he died. He wasn't even really cool with Ptolemy II Philadelphus for Ptolemy to go ahead and give up 100,000 slaves and all this gold and everything. So the whole thing is suspect just on that alone. And according to this dude, he was dead. So now another critic says here, physiological analysis by Louis Vives proposed that the pseudepigraphic letter was a forgery being written by an author living half a century after Ptolemy II Philadelphus, 285 to 246 BC, and assuming the name of Orestes. The inconsistencies and anachronisms of the author examined and exposed first by Humphrey Huda, 1659 to 1706, placed the writings closer to 170 to 130 BCE. So now that's like huge, because these things supposed to have been written, we're talking about during the time of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, which is like way before this date here. Now it goes on to say here, this is Bruce Metzger. He writes, most scholars who have analyzed the letters have concluded that the author cannot have been the man he represented himself to be, but was a Jew who wrote a fictitious account in order to enhance the importance of the Hebrew scriptures by suggesting that a pagan king had recognized their significance and therefore arranged for their translation into Greek. So he's saying this whole thing was basically a whole setup by the Jews. They made this whole letter up to give validity to the Hebrew version of the Old Testament, because we know the Septuagint is in Greek, and we know the Masoretes, they didn't agree with this whole thing, and the whole Masoretic text, which came about later, we're talking about 7th century to 10th century CE. Now the Masoretes went on ahead and created the Masoretic text, which is the Old Testament in Hebrew. This is where the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex comes from. They use the Masoretic text to reference. So there you have it right there. If you was to go and start doing research as to where the Torah first came from, since we know we don't have the original Torah that Moses wrote, we don't have the original books that the Israelites was writing or supposedly been writing. We don't have none of that. Somebody at some point in history had to come out and say to the world or say to the people, look, I have these writings that's supposed to be the Hebrew law, and it's talking about Moses and it's talking about how the world was created and God. I have those. It's not the originals. I have copies of what probably was the originals from these people. Somebody had to point out to the world that I have these manuscripts, I have this religion. And when you look at the official explanation to where your Torah comes from, it comes from the Septuagint Greek. It comes from the Greeks, white people. You cannot prove that your Torah came from a black man. This is why they have to throw King James in there. This is why they have to talk about King James. King James has to be black, because if he's not black, if you don't want to accept the King James version, then you got to go all the way back to them Greeks and look at the Septuagint that was given to us by a white man. And then we know later on we got the rest of the New Testament from the Romans, even though it was written in Greek.
you can't find any proof that before that, I'm talking about before the Roman Empire or during the time when the Greeks came up with this manuscript, you can't prove any black man had anything to do with that Torah. There is no proof. So King James has to be black. And I talked about that. Take a look.
But as I was saying earlier, I can understand why a lot of people really go for the Hebrew Israelite doctrine when it comes to the whole Deuteronomy part. Now, it's going to really be geared more towards black people in our whole, relation with slavery. Every black person who reads that Deuteronomy is going to feel that verse. Deuteronomy 28, 45 through 49, where you're just reading it. And other verses as well. I mean, you can understand that. I mean, you can understand where it's coming from. And it's like, man, that has to be the truth. As I said before, I'm not going to refute who it's talking about. It is clearly 100% talking about African slaves. There's no way around that. But here's the thing. This is the problem. The reason why people are reading Deuteronomy and thinking it's the real thing and thinking that, the whole Hebrew Israelite doctrine has to be true, is because they are thinking that Deuteronomy is the same as the original Bible when it's not. So people are reading the Bible. They read in Deuteronomy 28, and they are thinking that it says the exact same thing that Moses wrote when he wrote the Torah, when he wrote the 5 books. So they think it's the exact same thing as the ancient manuscripts. They think it's saying the exact same thing. So, of course, when you read Deuteronomy 28 and you read from 45 to 49, and you read all of the parts that's talking about slavery, you would read that and you would think, wow, they wrote that way back in ancient times. They wrote that way before slavery happened. So they knew it's prophecy. They knew what was going to happen to us. And it's describing exactly what happened to the African Americans in America as far as slavery. So it's some kind of prophecy. But as I said, the problem is this is not so. And if you don't do any research, you're not going to understand what took place and what happened. And I'm going to go through the history of this because I have to do it in order for you to understand what happened. Now, remember, we do not have the original 5 books of Moses. We don't have the originals. We don't have the original New Testament. We don't have the original Old Testament. We don't have any originals. We have copies of copies, and all of these copies are different from each other. All of the codexes, all of the codices are different from each other. So understand, like, these Hebrews are using the King James Version. Most of them subscribe to the King James Version. The problem is you want the Old Testament in its original Hebrew. And that's been a problem over the centuries, trying to get the Old Testament to fit what it originally said. And so many people, so many scholars and kings and rulers have put time and money into trying to get the translation correct for whatever reason. I'm going to go into that later. But as it stands today, the oldest copy, the oldest complete copy of the Old Testament in Hebrew is the Leningrad Codex. The Leningrad Codex is the oldest complete Old Testament in Hebrew. Now, of course, the Dead Sea Scrolls is older than the Leningrad Codex. It's much older than the Leningrad Codex, but the Dead Sea Scrolls is not complete. The Dead Sea Scrolls is in a lot of pieces. Now, the Aleppo Codex used to be the oldest complete Old Testament in Hebrew, and as a matter of fact, the Aleppo Codex is actually a better quality codex than the Leningrad Codex, but in 1947, it disappeared because the UN established a Jewish state in Palestine, and there was a rebellion that went on there. There was a riots that went on there, and it disappeared, and it didn't turn up until like 1957, 1958, and it was missing a lot of pages. Then the Leningrad Codex became the oldest complete Old Testament written in Hebrew. Now, as I said before, a lot of Hebrews do not reference those codices. They stick to the King James Version. And when I point these things out later on and show you how the King James Version is different, you can see where Deuteronomy is going to be different. But it's a lot of history that goes with it for you to understand where I'm coming from. So I'm going to get into that. Now, as I said, I don't have a problem with the Hebrew Israelites being black. I don't have a problem with Jesus being black and all that. But I have a problem with King James being a black man. Now, I understand for the Hebrew Israelite doctrine that he has to be black, because then you would say, well, a white man gave us the King James Version. But to refute all that, they say, well, King James was a black man. They have to, I mean, they doctrine depends on King James being a black man. Because then every black person can say, well, that doctrine came from a white man. King James was a white king. Look at his mom. Look at his dad. They was white. They were Scots. He was white. But he has to be black in order for the whole Hebrew Israelite doctrine to work. But then you have to ask yourself a few questions. Why would they accept the doctrine of a black man when they are enslaving black people? If, according to the Hebrews, if he was a Hebrew, if he was an Israelite, King James, why would they accept his doctrine? Why would they accept the doctrine of this black man, these white people? Then later on, why would they hide the fact that he was black? Now, when you look up King James, they obviously do not tell us that he was a black man. When you see the pictures, he's a white man. When you see pictures of his family, they are white, his parents are white. They are obviously hiding the fact that he was black, if he was black. But why would they go through the trouble of hiding the fact that he was a black man, but then turn around and give us his doctrine and say, it's the truth? If they hide the fact that he was black, then they're trying to deceive us. So why would we expect them to give us any truth in his Bible? Why would we expect that? So if the Bible was saying, and the whole Hebrew Israelite doctrine is saying that we would be enslaved to our enemies. So that's this white man, our enemy. Why would we expect our enemy to give us the truth? Now, regardless of what you want to say, that King James is a black man and he wrote the Bible, who distributed the Bible? Who passed that Bible throughout America? Who got that Bible around? It wasn't us. It wasn't black people. It was the white man. A black man did not invent the printing press. Black people did not own these printing shops and these companies around America. They was owned by white men. They could have changed the text at any time. King James died, soon after the King James words came out. I think it was 1620 or 1620 something. But why would we expect them to give us any truth? Now, the Hebrews walk around all day saying, the white man is the devil. The white man is the devil. Well, why would we expect the devil to give us any truth? Why would we expect them to care about our soul so much and to care about us understanding who we are to give us the truth in the King James doctrine, but then not tell us that King James was a black man? Now, this raises even more questions when it comes to the Bible itself and this whole issue of color. Because this is what I was talking about early in the video. It raises too many questions for Jesus to be black or white, Moses to be black or white, and them not definitively tell us. Now, there are a few instances in the Bible when it describes something as being black or white. Now, we know that the Romans were white. We know the Greeks was white. And according to the Hebrews, the Israelites were black. So if these are supposed to be eyewitness accounts, we know it's supposed to be eyewitness accounts of Jesus' crucifixion. So they could see that Jesus was a black man and the Jews were black, but the Roman soldiers had to be white, that the Greeks were white. So why is it not a definitive description of black and white in the Bible? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, color don't matter. Maybe they didn't want to make a point of color. Well, if the Hebrew Israelite doctrine is saying that the white man is the devil, then we need to know who the white man is. Who was white? Who was black? We need a description of who is who. But you have to understand that the Bible was created to deceive people. It was created to justify slavery, to justify war. So you cannot put Jesus as black. You can't put Jesus as white. And let me explain why. The reason why you can't definitively put Jesus as a white man, because most people will say, well, why didn't they just say Jesus was white in the Bible? If they wrote the Bible, if they wanted to control us with the Bible, if they wanted us to worship a white God, why would they not just say definitively in the Bible that Jesus was white? Now, we grew up with all these images of a white Jesus. White Jesus everywhere we went. They pounded a white Jesus in our head. You look at Passion of the Christ. Jesus was a white man. He looked at white to me. So they've been pounding a white Jesus in our head. So why not definitively put in the Bible that Jesus was the white man? Now, the reason why they cannot do that is because science is going to prove it wrong. Science is going to come along and say, well, there's no way in the world he could have been white in this part of the world. There's no way in the world his line could be white. because we know from a scientific fact that black people was here long before white people. And then that would completely destroy the Bible, would completely cripple it, if you say definitively that Jesus was white. Now, the reason why you can't say definitively that Jesus was black either is because if you have a plan in place to enslave the masses of black people in Africa, if you have a plan in place to steal our history, to steal our knowledge, to keep us in poverty and out of power for hundreds of years, you can't turn around and have white people worship a black God and expect them to follow your plan. Because if they bowing down and praying to a black God in their time of need, they're going to feel guilty about what they're doing to black people, and they're not going to want to go through with it. They're not going to sit by and let the things happen to us that have been happening to us over these years and then pray to a black God. They would not be able to do it. So you can't say definitively that Jesus was black either. You have to leave it up to interpretation. Now, when you look at it, they have already basically told the world that he was white without having to put it into the doctrine with the power of motion pictures. So when we look at these movies and we see Jesus being played by a white person, Noah is white, Moses is white, the ancient Egyptians being played by white people, we can't go to them and say, well, science says that there's no way that Noah could be white, because science tells us that black people came before white people. Then they can say, well, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. It's just a person who we got to play a role. But they still get to put into the minds of the masses of people that God is white, Noah is white, Moses is white, and get around the whole problem of the Bible not definitively mentioning Jesus being black or white. And they get to take advantage and cast themselves as being the image of God. The Bible is supposed to be eyewitness accounts. We're talking about prophecies, predictions from the future. Revelations is a prophecy about the future. It gives a description of Jesus Christ, but it does not definitively tell us if he's black or white. It leaves it up to interpretation. Hair white like wool, feet like brass in a burning furnace. This is not a description. This is bullcrap. This is playing games. Now, if you have a prophecy about our future, then you understand that in our future, in our time, we describe people as being black or white. So to not definitively say that Jesus was a black man, Jesus was a white man, shows deception. And you can't say that, well, maybe they didn't want to put a definitive description because they didn't want it to be about color or race. But we know in our future, we know now today that the white race have definitively taken the image of Jesus Christ and cast him as a white person. And you have more people believing Jesus is white than black. How is that truth? If the Bible wanted to give us truth, it would have told us definitively that Jesus was black, definitively, to take away from somebody taking the power of putting the image of Jesus Christ in their race, of their color. And the Great Schism was basically where you get the separation of Christianity and Catholicism, because they basically couldn't agree. They couldn't agree on the source of the Holy Spirit, and they definitely couldn't agree on the Pope having universal jurisdiction over the whole religion. They couldn't agree on it. So this is where the separation occurred. So now this is going to bring me into the whole King James part of it. I don't have nothing to say about him being, bisexual or homosexual or anything like that, because he had 2 kids. So he probably was bisexual, but that's besides the point. The whole thing is this. It really begins with the whole Protestant Reformation. That's when this whole thing really starts, and what led to the creation of the King James Version. Now, the Protestant Reformation began in 1517 somewhere in Germany. Now, the Protestants basically wanted to get rid of any remnants of Roman Catholicism inside of certain churches. So now understand that Rome ruled Great Britain from 43 AD to 410 AD. But after the whole thing was over, they still had control over the Church of Great Britain for a while. Now, when King Henry VIII came along and assumed the throne, he couldn't get a male heir from his wife. So he wanted a divorce. He wanted Pope Clement to give him a divorce from his wife because she couldn't provide him with a son. They had a daughter. So now when Pope Clement didn't grant him his divorce, he passed 2 laws. The first one was in 1532 with the submission of the clergy. Now, the submission of the clergy basically said that they could not change any laws or make any rules without permission from the king. Then in 1534, the Act of Supremacy was passed, which basically said that they would take all the taxes that they were sending to Rome and make those taxes from the church payable to the crown. And also, nobody could basically ask Rome for anything, whether it had to do with religion or otherwise. It was forbidden. So you couldn't even talk to Rome and say anything to Rome. Nobody from the Church of Great Britain could talk to Rome under these new laws. So once these things was passed, the Protestant Reformation got in there and was saying, you know what, we need to get rid of any remnants of Rome. So in 1539, King Henry VIII gave us the Great Bible. Now it was prepared by some Protestant scholars from England. Now, some of these same Protestant scholars from England later went to Geneva, Switzerland, and they created the Geneva Bible in 1560. Now, remember, the Geneva Bible was the one that had the annotations. They had the writings that was on the side, basically the commentary that was talking about the Bible. And the Geneva Bible is also the Bible that named the Pope as the Antichrist. So now a lot of the ruling elite in England, who was under Queen Elizabeth I, they didn't like the annotations in the Geneva Bible. A lot of people didn't like the Geneva Bible because they said it was being too honest. It was giving away too much. So in 1568, Queen Elizabeth I gave us the Bishop's Bible. It was revised in 1572. So then in 1604 is when King James convened the Hampton Court Conference because the Puritans had a problem with Queen Elizabeth's Bible. A lot of people was concerned with the translation from the Hebrew. A lot of people didn't believe it was a good translation. They didn't believe that the Great Bible by King Henry VIII was a good translation of the Hebrew. So understand what's taking place here. You basically had, once the Crusades started, you had Rome going out and wiping out the churches who was not accepting the Pope as having universal jurisdiction over the Bible, over Catholicism, over Christianity. Wiping these people out who didn't accept certain terminologies that, or certain rituals that the Catholic Church was using and things they was doing. You know, where the Holy Spirit comes from, the whole divinity of Jesus. So many different things they disagreed upon, which caused the Great Schism and that big divide. So now when you go to King James, you look at how the King James Version came into place, it had nothing to do with somebody laying hands on King James and, you know, King James being filled with the Spirit or being an Israelite or anything like that. It had everything to do with them trying to separate from Rome. This is what the Protestants was doing. This is what the Puritans was doing. It was going out and trying to eradicate any traces of Roman Catholicism from churches. Because you can't sit up there and say, I'm a man of God and God this and that and Jesus this, and you're going out and you're killing Christians. You can't do that. So a lot of people didn't accept Rome. So understand, the whole thing with the King James Version was to separate themselves from Rome. So in doing that, they obviously changed the doctrine. So we know that in Catholicism, they have to do the canonical books. They have Maccabees. They have all those 7 books that the King James Version do not have. They left them out, saying that they were never written in Hebrew and it was only written in Greek, so they shouldn't be a part of the Bible, which is why the deuterocanonical books are not in the King James Version, but are in the Catholic books and in the old books. So now their whole thing was these things was never written in Hebrew. They wasn't written in Aramaic. And of course, back then they could not know. So what the Hebrews will tell you is God put a spirit on King James and on the translators to get a perfect translation of the Bible, and that they used the Masoretic text, or they used Textus Rescriptus, or they used some kind of Hebrew codex or manuscript so they would get the translation correct. They didn't use what the Romans was using. And the thing is, they always say that, you know, the King James Version is just like the Dead Sea Scrolls. But guess what? The King James Version does not contain the Deuterocanonicals. It doesn't have it in it. It doesn't have Maccabees. But the Dead Sea Scrolls does. The Dead Sea Scrolls has the Deuterocanonicals, it has Maccabees, it does not have a book of Esther. So how could the King James Version be like the Dead Sea Scrolls when the Dead Sea Scrolls have those books and the King James Version does not? You would think not having those 7 books in there, including the prophecies of Daniel, the extra prophecies, those extra books that was in Daniel and some other books, you would think that would dramatically change the Bible, and it obviously has. So the whole thing is, what was going on was the people, when they was writing these Bibles, look at all the people who wrote Bibles after the Crusades. Remember, Rome was basically taking over Christianity everywhere. They were saying, you can't translate it from Latin. You can't do this. You can't write it in English. Remember, John Wycliffe, John Huss. Remember all the people who was killed for translating Bibles, burnt at the stake for what they was doing. This was Rome doing this. They didn't want nobody to change anything. But you had England, you had other places who was changing these Bibles. They was taking out things that they didn't agree with Rome on, and it was changing the books. So it's not like what Rome had. But this is the thing that people are not remembering. Where did all this stuff come from? It came from Rome. So if you change anything that they did, you are changing what is close to the original.
So I don't understand when you look at that, when you let common sense set in. I mean, everybody rushed to believe when they read Deuteronomy 28, not thinking. Common sense should tell you. This dude wrote that book, your King James Version, where it's talking about all this stuff with slavery. And as I said in the video, I'm not going to deny, I'm going to say 100% for certain, yes, Deuteronomy 28 is talking about black slaves in America. Nowhere around that. Deuteronomy 28 do not fit the white Jews. It don't fit these Ashkenazi Jews. It don't fit no other people but us, but African Americans. It's no way around that. So people want to look at that and get all holy and say, oh my goodness, it's real. And they knew about this stuff, and how did they know? Not fathoming common damn sense. Dude, he wrote the book between 1604 and 1611. Slavery was already in full swing. Now, we have already proven countless times when you go back and look at the old manuscripts, when you look at the codices, scribes put shit in there. It's already proven. Now, we already proved that they added to the Bible. We proved that they added to Mark, verses 9 through 20. We proved that the story about the woman taken in adultery, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, proven that that was added. So we know we have a history of people adding things to the Bible. So, Hebrews want to act like it's so far-fetched that they added Deuteronomy 28. And the thing is, as I've proven, when you go read the original or the oldest complete manuscript on the planet, which is Codex Sinaiticus, when you read it, it does not say the same thing. Already proved that.
Now, let's get into this Deuteronomy 28:68. Because as I said, it is not the same. When you go back to the original, to the oldest versions of the Bible, it don't say nothing about no Egypt or no ships. So understand, we do not have an ancient copy of Deuteronomy. I'm talking about before 500 AD, written in Hebrew. It don't exist. We don't have a complete copy. The oldest complete copy of Deuteronomy that we have is in Codex Sinaiticus. Now, remember, the Dead Sea Scrolls, take a look at them. This is Deuteronomy and the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's pieces. This is what they give you because they know it don't say anything like the King James Version, and it doesn't even say the same thing that the codices say. It says something completely different, and I'm sure of that. So we don't have an ancient copy of Deuteronomy. We don't have a BC copy of Deuteronomy that's complete. The oldest complete copy of Deuteronomy that we have is in Codex Sinaiticus. And it doesn't say anything about no ships. It doesn't say anything about no going back to Egypt on ships or slaves or anything to that effect at all. So we're going to take a look at it and see what it actually says. So now we're at the website for Codex Sinaiticus. And I want you to see right off the bat, this is all that we have. Chapter 3, 4, 28, 29, and 30. That's it. Now, this is the most complete copy of Deuteronomy that we have that dates before 500 AD. Nothing else on earth is more complete than this, period. We know the Dead Sea Scrolls is older, but it's not as complete. Codex Sinaiticus has the most complete version of the Bible. It's the most complete Bible on earth, period. So when you go back and you're trying to figure out what is as closest to the original as possible, you have to go to Codex Sinaiticus. You can't go to the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's in pieces. Now, this manuscript was actually stashed away at some point in time in Mount Sinai at a monastery, and it was found by Constantine von Tischendorf in the 1800s. So it was sitting there for hundreds of years, and it's in pretty good condition. Now, here you see a little bit of holes or whatever like that, but you can actually make these words out. You can actually make them out and see what it's saying, but they give it to you over here. So here is 68, Deuteronomy 28:68. We can see it here. Now, when we match it up with King James Version, I mean, you can eyeball it and see that it's completely different. Doesn't even start off with ka, and doesn't even say the same thing. So here it is. This is what it's saying in Sinaiticus. Completely different. Nothing about Egypt, nothing about ship or slavery or anything like that. So understand that we know, as I showed you in my last video, the scribes made mistakes. So if you try to copy and paste and do like a Google Translate, if a letter is off, you're not going to get the correct translation. You got to know or show it to somebody who actually knows, who can read Greek. And I mean, one of the things that you do is when you start reading manuscripts is you can kind of tell a difference that if a scribe was trying to say like that and spelled it than, and you can just like read it and say like, well, maybe he meant that. I know he didn't mean than. And it's just little, errors like that. So if somebody trying to say the and they spell it THO or THA, I know they probably meant THE. So when you read these manuscripts, it's saying here, definite place, there presents an enemy unto your child, and child run away and not be the inquiree. And that's basically what it's saying. Something about children. Doesn't say anything about no ships. Doesn't say anything about Egypt. Definite place, there presents an enemy unto your child, and child run away and not be the inquiree. That's what it's saying. So when people read this thing, when they read the King James Version and they look at it, they are thinking that it says the exact same thing here in Codex Sinaiticus, or in the Septuagint, or in the original Bible, and it doesn't. It's not the same. They changed it, obviously. So when you're reading all those passages, excuse me, from the King James Version, it's talking about slavery. The King James Version, they started in 1604, finished in 1611. Slavery was going on for hundreds of years already. Of course they knew about the iron around the neck. Of course they knew about what was happening to the slaves. They knew about the stuff already, and they wrote it in the Bible. This is what happened. So here's the proof right here. You can go through the manuscript yourself. Don't take my word for it. Go through it yourself and do the comparison. It's not the same. Now, you can't go to the Dead Sea Scrolls and do a comparison because it's not complete, because they don't want you to know what it says. But here's the proof right here. It doesn't say the same thing.
So there you go. You got clear proof that your King James Version is not saying the same thing as the oldest manuscripts. And the problem is, as I said, Deuteronomy 28 is not complete. The most complete Deuteronomy 28 just so happens to be in the King James Version. And they want to say that it equals the Dead Sea Scrolls, and nobody can tell that because, as I said, the Dead Sea Scrolls are in pieces. This doctrine has been crushed and defeated. You people are in denial. None of you can refute what's in this video or in my previous videos. You can't do it. There is no proof. You don't belong debating with anybody when it comes to religion because you have no proof. You have faith. That's it. You have no facts. And the arguments that I always get is, how can you believe this book? Or the white man wrote that book. They want to always attack, your scholarship or the stuff that you use to research stuff when they believe in a Bible, which is a book. It has no proof to back it up. When I say that, just because it's in the Bible, you can't believe it. You can say that with any book. The thing is, the books that we use to research, we can actually go research and find proof to back up what we read. You can't do that with your Bible. We can do that. And it's weird that so many Hebrews, so many people find it so far-fetched that the Greeks had anything to do with the Old Testament. They found it far-fetched. People just, oh, you crazy. What are you talking about? Oh, I can't believe that. People are really blown away by that in a negative way. They just can't fathom it. But the thing is, you can't find, as I said, no Hebrew Torah, no Hebrew Old Testament that predates the Septuagint Greek. The only proof that we have of a Hebrew Torah or Old Testament is after the Septuagint Greek. I gave you the Leningrad Codex, the one that's the oldest complete Hebrew version of the Old Testament. It's not older than the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it's more complete than the Dead Sea Scrolls. I talked about all that in the video. And as I said, this is the thing. They don't watch it, so they don't get this information. You have no proof. You have speculation. You have belief and faith that there was a Hebrew version of the Torah before the Septuagint Greek, but you can't prove it. We can only go by proof. That's all I can go by. If you want to get into faith, you got to deal with people who deal with faith. We don't deal with faith. We deal with facts, proof, what we can prove. You can't have a conversation or debate with somebody who's bringing facts to the table and you got faith. Who's going to play them games? Can't play those games. That is crazy to believe that a 500-year-old man spent 100 years building an ark and put 2 of every animal on it. How am I supposed to take you seriously when you believe that? When you believe a man can survive 3 days in a big fish? I can't take you seriously. We can't have a serious dialogue when you believe such a thing happened. So, it's not far-fetched at all when you look at the proof, as I've shown with Herodotus, as I've shown with the Ionians. Now, I got into this, and of course, as I said, people don't want to accept Herodotus and his writings. He never mentions the Hebrews. Now, the only thing that these Hebrews have right, that they are correct on, is the fact that the ancient people who are known to be Hebrews or Israelites, the people who lived in Israel during that time period, was black. That is the only thing they have correct. But this is the problem. This is when I talk about critical thinking. When a person is so caught up in a belief that they don't want to think critically because it destroys their faith, it destroys their belief. So they don't want to go that far and dwell into something that could crush what they believe in. Now, common sense should tell you, if I was to say, well, what was the belief of the black people in Israel before they was Hebrews, before they became Jews? And of course, a Hebrew would say, well, wait a minute, there was always Hebrews or there was always Jews. Somebody might say something that's stupid, but you got to think back. We know for a fact that Israel was a part of the Egyptian civilization, the Egyptian empire. We know they ruled that area. So yeah, it was black people there. Show me before the Egyptians ruled a people there called Hebrews. That goes into the whole thing that if Moses and the Israelites, if the Jews were slaves in Egypt, when they fled Egypt and Moses parted the Red Sea, all that bullshit, where did they go? They couldn't have went into Israel even after 40 years of wandering, because it was still under Egyptian rule. That is proven history. That is a proven fact. Everything that the Egyptians talked about and wrote about, no depictions of a bunch of kids being killed, because of the Pharaoh, because of Moses came there and, caused the firstborn of everybody to die. There's no stelas or depictions of that happening. Herodotus, who wrote about damn near everything, doesn't speak about the Hebrew. The Greeks didn't even talk about that, what happened. Somebody during that time should have been talking about the Red Sea being parted and these soldiers being swallowed up by the sea while running from the whole, Egyptian army or what have you. Somebody should have been talking about that. Nobody. You only find it in your Bible. Nobody else mentions it. So that right there alone should make you think, this is suspect. Besides the fact that there is no proof that they was there. But then you got to look, since we know that the Egyptians was in Israel, we know the Persians came and conquered the Egyptians, but the Egyptians still was in Israel. Even when the Persians came, they still had black people in Israel. So when the Greeks came, I mean, all of the black people wasn't gone from Israel. Still was black people there. Plain and simple. So what you think happened? Yeah, of course the Israelites, or the people who you want to call Hebrews, the Israelites during that time, was black. But they was black people from Egypt. They was Egyptians. Plain and simple. Who was converted to this religion. That's what the facts show. So if you're going to say that they was black, you got to trace it all the way back and say, well, where did these black people come from? They couldn't have been Jews when the Egyptians was ruling there. And since we can't find any proof of Jews before this so-called slavery, what does that tell you? What is that? Where did the Hebrews come from before they were supposedly enslaved in Egypt? Where did they come from? Think about that. Where is any proof of that civilization? You cannot find me any proof that the Hebrews or any Jews actually existed before the 4th century BCE. And people think that's crazy too, but go look. Find me proof. I'm not talking about no wooden carving. I'm not talking about no bowl that has been already proven to be fake. All this stuff that they find, they want to trace back past 400 BCE, saying that it's Hebrew. All of it's been debunked and proven either not being able to determine what it really was or how old it is, or fake. And I talked about that in the video as well. So it's all bogus. The people didn't exist until the Greeks created them, which is why Herodotus doesn't talk about them, because he died before the Greeks invaded Egypt and conquered Egypt. So now understand, most of the time when Hebrews go back and start finding Israelites in Africa, the ancient Israelites, yeah, of course, they exist. They was around. We talking about, after 400 BCE. Once the whole, religion got put in on the people, and once people was becoming Jews or Hebrews and going out into Africa and spreading that whole Jewish doctrine, yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago. So you can go back far into antiquity and find these Jews, of course. But you can't find them past 400 BCE. And that's the whole point. So the thing is, of course, that timeline fits to the 4th century BCE, where you had the Greeks coming to Egypt. And as I just showed you in the video, how the Greeks and the Egyptians was living together, so they knew the culture. They knew the culture. They just didn't have whatever secrets that the Egyptians was holding from them. And, they eventually took that. And that was the whole thing. Remember, when you look at history, I just pointed this out in a previous video, that remember, you had the Egyptians reach out to the Greeks. The Greeks fought alongside the Egyptians against the Persians. So they had to be dialogue and they had to know each other. We know when the Egyptians tried to hire the Spartans with a ship full of wheat or barley or something, we know that the Persians destroyed the ship and they didn't get the help that they need. We know about Xerxes writing a letter to the Greeks saying that we are from the same people. We are brothers. We are basically from the same line. We don't want to fight you, so don't protect these Egyptians. All this stuff is documented, proven stuff. You're not going to find that with the Hebrew doctrine. They only go back to that Bible, which is not proven, which is not a fact. It's not based on any proven history, which is why that religion and all other religion requires faith. Like, y'all got to stop playing. Stop playing. Coming here talking too much trash, and this is what I get mostly in the comment section, is insults instead of actual facts. It's just a person with their feelings hurt because they seen something that destroyed their hope. And to me, I don't even know why people want to get into the whole Hebrew doctrine. It's bullshit. There's no proven history to it. It don't even sound good, and it's degrading. It's degrading. But you need to understand, what is the whole purpose? What is the point of that doctrine? When you start going back, and I'm talking about slavery even, and if you listen to the slave narratives, and I talked about this before too. So if you read the slave narratives as well, many of those slaves who survived talked about the white man's doctrine saying that they were cursed people. they were cursed by God to be slaves. Sounds familiar? It's already been documented. People already know, for common damn sense. They used the Bible to enslave people, to enslave us, to justify our enslavement. They used the Bible. So if you got white people reading the Bible and saying that, well, God punished them, or, they don't have any souls, or something is wrong with these black people, which is why we can enslave them. When you got them believing that, they can accept it more. When you got black people believing that, they can accept it more. But when I read the slave narratives, when I was listening to some of the audio tapes, you can go to the website, you can check them out yourself, and hearing them saying that, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Because why do you give them the Bible? It always blew my mind. And I had a lot of people say this. How can you do to a people what they did to those slaves and then talk about Jesus? You have to have an excuse for that. You have to justify that some way. That's something bad. That's something evil. So if you can point to the Bible and say, no, God is doing this to you. But if you be good, be a good servant, like I talk about in the beginning of Death's Game, the Bible Christianity Finally Explained, you heard what she said. That's from the slave narrative. She was talking about what the slave masters was telling them. Oh, if you be good, then you're going to live a good life. But that's when you die. That's in heaven, not on earth. On earth, you're going to be a damn slave because God said that's what you're supposed to be. So the Hebrews don't want to talk about that. They don't want to admit that, wait a minute, the doctrine that they're preaching is the same shit that the slave master was preaching during slavery. Just that simple. They just put a spin on it and said, oh no, we ain't from Ham, we from Shem. When I show you in the video that when you go back and look at that Shem, the Shemitic tribe, they don't really get into them that much. But what you do realize is all they do is go take the Africans' shit. That's what it's about.
So now we went over before, and I've shown you that when you read 2 Samuel, it's talking about King David going into Jebus or Jerusalem and basically conquering the Jebusites. He's there, he's talking about if you smite the deaf and the lame, I'll make somebody a chief or a captain or something like that when you read 2 Samuel chapter 5. Now, the whole thing is, this is Jerusalem, but it's telling you that Jerusalem was called something different. Before it was called Jerusalem, it was called Jebus. Now, we know that it was inhabited by the Jebusites, who are descendants of Ham. So we're talking about black people. We're talking about these Israelites and King David coming into Jerusalem or into Jebus and killing these black people and taking over their land, right? So according to the Hebrew Israelites, King David and these Israelites supposed to be us, supposed to be black people. So you got black on black crime, right? So you got the Israelites supposed to be of the line of Shem coming into Jerusalem, right? But Ezekiel 16, and I know a Hebrew who is smart is going to, cringe right now and say, oh shit, here you go with that Ezekiel 16 shit. Yeah, here I go. It says, thus say the Lord, unto Jerusalem. He didn't say unto Jebus. He didn't say unto the Jebusites. He says, thus says the Lord unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity is of the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite and thy mother a Hittite. You read Genesis 10:15, it tells you the descendants of Ham, and the Amorites and the Hittites are the descendants of Ham, black people. So God is saying, Jerusalem, you come from Ham, but Jerusalem's supposed to be of Shem. It's supposed to be where the Israelites come from. So God is saying here that the Israelites come from Ham. He's basically telling you what I've been saying in this whole video, that these people were black. But let's go down here. Let's make sure we're talking about the same Israelites, the same people. So when you go read 16:8, it says, now when I passed by thee and looked upon thee, behold, thy time was the time of love. And I spread my skirt over thee and covered thy nakedness. Yea, I swear unto thee and enter into a covenant with thee, saith the Lord God, and thou becometh mine. So, did God make a covenant with the Jebusites? No. Did he make a covenant with Jebus? No. He made a covenant with the Israelites, the people of Jerusalem. So why is it saying in the beginning Why is he saying that these people come from the line of Ham, but these Hebrew Israelites are telling you we came from Shem? What's going on here? So now let's bring this whole thing together so you can understand what is taking place and what this book is about. This Bible, especially the Old Testament, is all about the conquest of black people, period. They never mention any of the people of the tribe of Shem. They don't go into what happened to these people. We don't find them in history. We don't find them nowhere. The Bible tells you that they don't build anything. They don't build any cities. They go into lands that was built by the people of the tribe of Ham and conquer it. Just like in real life. What happened in real life? All the lands that we had, they came into and took. You talking about the people from Japheth and from Shem. But who are they really? Who are they really? We're talking about Arabs, and we're talking about the Romans and the Greeks. We're talking about white people, we're talking about Arabs. That's who Japheth and Shem represents. Period. Don't represent no black people. Black people are of Ham, if you want to go and use it biblically. But in real life, it's just justifying what they did to us. That's all it's doing. By saying that we conquered these black people and took their land, murdered them, stole their history because God said it was okay. So when we go to Deuteronomy 7 and we start reading it, it's backing up exactly what I'm saying, trying to make it biblical, saying that God said it was okay. So it says, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and have cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. This is real history right here. That's what it's talking about. That's what it's basing it off. They went in and conquered all these lands. This is a black people it's talking about. These are lands of black folks that we had the Greeks and the Romans and the Persians and the Arabs come in and take from us. They took it from us under the guise of religion, under the guise of this made up God, basically saying that it was ordained by God. This is God's will that these people be wiped out and destroyed and we take over their lands, because they never show you in the Bible the people of Shem building anything. They don't build anything. They don't have any cities. They come into cities and they conquered. Plain and simple. It's trying to take history and make it biblical and use it to justify what happened to black people. That's all it is. That they were set apart. These are God's special people, so God allowed this to happen. So when you go to Deuteronomy 7, you continue reading, it says, and when the Lord thy God shall deliver them from thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Let's go down here to 6. It says, for thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. So these people are special. But he's talking about the people who are from the tribe of Ham. He ain't talking about no Shemitic people. He's talking about people that come from Ham, not nobody that come from Shem and Japheth. When you do the etymology, or when you trace back the genealogy, from Genesis 10:15, these people come from Ham. So when you're reading it, and it's talking about utterly destroying these people, if these people are supposed to be Israelites who destroy these people, I mean, we're talking about they destroyed their own people when you read in Deuteronomy. When it's talking about destroying the Jebusites and the Hittites and the Hivites and all these black people, we're talking about black people killing black people. This is what it's saying, because 1 minute God is saying in the Bible that, hey, you people from Jerusalem, you come from these people. He just said that you come from. How are you destroying yourself? Didn't he just say your birth and your nativity is of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites? But then it says in Deuteronomy 7 that, hey, y'all go and utterly destroy these people. It's the same people. Y'all destroyed yourself. What's going on here? So it's clearly trying to tell you something here, which is why I tell you this is a parable. So now when you read in Deuteronomy and it's talking about utterly destroying these people, wiping them out, Show me in history where the Israelites conquered the Hittites. Show me in history where the Israelites conquered any of these people. If the Israelites was going around and conquering all these people, they would have been written about. There would have been monuments. There would have been so many people talking about these badass Israelites going around conquering everything. But there's no mention. Herodotus says nothing. Diodorus says nothing. Nobody says anything about these Israelites conquering the way the Bible is describing them, because it never happened. The people who was doing all the conquering was the Greeks and the Romans and the Persians and later the Arabs and Muslims.
Now here's the problem, here's the issue. I don't expect any religious person, any Hebrew, to sit through that video. I don't expect them to make it, that far into the video, because it hurts. It's painful for them to listen to that and to see that information. Do you realize what that last clip proves? Do you realize it? Whether you want to realize it or not, it crushes their entire doctrine. The first thing, the whole premise of their damn religion is we come from Shem. We are of the tribe of Shem. We was put in slavery because we disobeyed God. I just showed you in that video. Go back and watch it. Do the research yourself. Listen to what I'm saying. Take notes. I just showed you. It ain't come from me. It's in the book. And it shows you clearly that the book is saying that they themselves come from Ham. It just said to you that the people in Jerusalem comes from Ham. Now, it's talking about the Jebusites and the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Perizzites and all these site people that I just showed you. But when you trace them back, they go to the line of Ham and not Shem. Game over. Whether you accept it or not, it's in the book. So who are these people from Shem? And that's the whole mystery on what you need to understand. It's a parable. It's trying to tell you something. They don't even get into who these people are because they don't know who the hell they are. They don't want to get into who they is. They can only go by our history because we have the history. So what basically happened? What is the book saying? Just like I showed you in the video. It's saying that you had all these kingdoms and territories and land built by the people from the line of Ham, or in real life, built by African people. What do you have in the Bible? You have the people from the tribe of Shem and Japheth coming there and taking the land from the people from the tribe of Ham, from the line of Ham. So in real life, you have white people and Arabs taking African lands and territories. That's all it is. It's a justification for what they actually did. And these Hebrews are too stupid and too emotional to realize what is being said. That kills the entire doctrine. There's no debate, as I keep saying. It's nothing to talk about no more. It's over. Whether you want to accept it or not, refute that. You can't. It's in the book. It's right in the book. Plain and simple. You can't look at it and deny it. It ain't coming from me. It's common sense. When you start putting this stuff together, that something does not fit. It don't seem right. So, how are they destroying their own people if they come from this line? And as I said, if you watch my whole Saturn and Satan series, it's a little bit deeper than that because we're talking about the same people. We know they come from us. So you get the parable that we are the mother and father of all races. The Bible is saying your mother and father are from the Amorites and the Hittites, all from the same people. Your birth and nativity is from these people that you are destroying. Do you get it? Do you understand what it's saying? This whole thing is about the conquest of African people. They put it in the Bible and it's all hitting with religion. And you got these Hebrews standing on the corner screaming at people, coming all over YouTube, talking all this smack. And they don't even read the damn book. It's right clearly in their face. And one of their favorite books that they love to read, which is Deuteronomy, all in the Old Testament. Read Deuteronomy, read Ezekiel, gang. They don't connect those dots because they blinded by emotion. So the whole purpose of the religion that some white man created, which that is a fact, is to detach you from Egypt, detach you from Africa, and to get you to hate those places. Because when you talk to these Hebrews, they can't stand Africans. They can't stand the Egyptians. Can't stand them. You get the doctrine. Why would we trade Egypt and Africa? Why would we trade Africa in for little dusty ass Israel? For dusty ass Jerusalem? We're going to trade the richest continent on the face of the earth for little teeny Israel. That's what they're trying to sucker you into doing. And people buying into it too much because they're getting caught up in the Deuteronomy 28 and their brain is not functioning for them to just say, oh, common damn sense. The Bible was written between 1604 and 1611. Of course it's talking about slavery. That's not no big mystery. That's common sense. How can you sit there and think that, oh, this is the same thing that Moses wrote way back before slavery? How did he know? It's a prophecy come true when they wrote the damn book 1604 to 1611. And you can't find an earlier copy. And then the earliest copy that we do have don't say the same thing, but they won't accept it because it came from Rome, where they book come from. You can't get no King James Version, as I said, without the Vulgate. You can't get none of these manuscripts without what the Greeks put out. So when I say that the white man created this doctrine, prove he didn't. You can't. The inception of the book comes from the Greeks. It's not far-fetched, it's proven. You can't prove it didn't. So there's no debate. There's no debate at all. So wanted to put this video out so I can just crush all bullcrap. I'm here. Anybody who want to debate anything that I just said in this video or got any facts to go against what I said in this video, excuse me, comment section is right there. And I like debate in the comment section, but if you come here with insults and bullcrap, I'm not even going to address you. I'm just going to delete your comment. I have no problem talking with anybody about anything in the comment section. Now my website is going up soon. It'll be ready soon. And I'm gonna have a little debate section in the website. We're going to discuss topics and debate in the website. I'm gonna have a whole little chat thing there where we can dialogue back and forth. Not just me, because I probably won't have too much time for it, but anybody can. So it's going to be a topic section and a debate section where people can debate and talk about certain topics and certain videos that's going to be in that section. So I want people to take advantage of that because, as we know, if you like me and you really into this stuff, the comment section is where it goes down. It's war. But you get these immature, emotional people who come there and they ruin the whole thing by, with insults and no facts. If you don't come here with facts and proof, which no Hebrew will, it's no debate. It's no argument. So, but it's okay. It's cool to talk to people who are into this information, who think they got proof when there is no proof. If there was actual proof of this Bible, everybody would be religious. It would be no doubt. Jesus Christ and the Old Testament, it would be no faith. The book itself talks about faith. The whole religion is centered around faith and belief. Do y'all understand what that means? Faith and belief, you need it because there is no facts. There is no proof, which is why they require faith. Understand that. It's crazy because it's sad to see so many black people getting caught up in this doctrine and this bogus. And they get so emotionally attached to it that they don't want to see the truth. And then when they come to my channel and then try to talk that crap, they can't even back it up because they only got the information from a damn YouTube video and they didn't read no books. This is the problem. But I wanted to put this out just real quick Most of you seen the video. If you didn't watch the whole thing, now you can kind of see what's in the video. I don't understand. This is the information that you want. You want to get this information. You want to learn it. You want to know it. Do your own research. Like I said, don't listen to me. I provide my sources. I explain and I break down how I came to my conclusions. All you got to do is do your own research and you can see for yourself what's clear. And it's not hard. But don't let nobody tell you, especially these Hebrews, because to me it's laughable, the whole doctrine. Don't let them come in the comment section and jump onto your conversation with this crap. And I keep seeing that in the comment section. People be talking and then you get one of these Hebrews jump in there and just try to blow up the whole discussion. And that goes with any religion. None of these people have proof. Don't let them talk you out of what you know and talk you out of your damn common sense, because they don't have any. Don't let them do it. I see that too much. Y'all, because y'all don't know so much, y'all let these people, scare y'all away. Just calm it down. All you got to say is prove it. You don't got to argue with these people. Just say, show me the proof. They can't do that. And they can't. It's no proof. So there's no argument. There's no debate. Which is why I always say that there is no religious debate. We got proven facts. They got faith. We win every single time. Just because they kick some stuff that sound okay, that might sound okay to you, sounds stupid to me most of the time. Just because they kick some stuff don't mean they know what they're talking about. The stuff doesn't fit nowhere. There is no proof. Comment section is below. Anybody who want to talk about this stuff with facts and proof, respectively, without no bull crap, because they get so emotional because they can't prove me wrong that they come straight with the insults. Now, sometimes it's funny, but come on, I ain't got time for that. Like, I'm a busy person. I try to check the comment sections when I can. I had to turn off alerts because, if you look at my Google, it's on infinity. And, my YouTube thing is 99 plus. I don't know how many comments is up there. It's a lot. It's too many for me to answer. But when it comes to certain things that got to do with this Bible religion and, Islam, I try to make a conscious effort to answer those questions because, like, as I said in the video, I know people ain't got time to watch this stuff. And Deuteronomy 28 is really convincing if you don't got no information, if you don't understand what you're reading. So I gotta address this and try to, wake people up from it because too many black folks is getting sucked into it. I'm seeing it more, and all it is a trap to get you to let go of Africa and Kemet and to say, damn Africa, we from Israel. That ain't shit. That don't got nothing. If you pay attention to the news, they don't even like black people over there. They throwing us out. How stupid do they look? Banging Israel and, banging with Israel and promoting Israel when they don't even want them in a damn country over there. And we can prove we was there before them. It's a joke. It's a game. These people want to play it. And a lot of these dudes is agents. Because this whole religion is created to deceive you. And smart people can see right through it. Anybody who knows they shit can see through it. That this is some white man bullshit to separate us and to destroy us. And it's sad to see smart people, because some of these people are smart, get sucked into it. And, it's crazy. But this was my video. I wanted to put it out. As I said, the website will be up. Probably the end of the week or the beginning of next week, but it'll be up for sure by next week, and there's going to be a lot of stuff on it. It's going to be our website, and it's going to be good. It's going to be a good site, and I have books on there and a lot of stuff on there, videos from YouTube. There's going to be some videos that's going to come out that's not going to be on YouTube, that's going to only be on that website. So when I'm going to do a video explaining everything. Sorry to go long-winded, as I normally do, but this is my video. I wanted to do this and crush this Hebrew stuff. Get it the fuck out of here. It's bogus. Anything that attacks Africa, we should be attacking back. Plain and simple. But this is my video. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next video.